राग बने जन जन का राग, इस विचार बीज की जो निर्भीक।
उद्भव स्थान तुम्हें करूं वंदन, हे चिन्मय विश्व विद्यापीठ,
हे चिन्मय विश्व विद्यापीठ। श्रीमद् शंकर भगवत पादस्य अवतार भूमौ प्रतिष्ठिते श्री चिन्मय स्वामिनां सत्संकल्पस्य फलभूते अस्मिन् श्री चिन्मय विश्व विद्यापीठे इदं नेशनल यूथ कॉन्फ्रेंस IKS आयोज्यते।
अत्र देशस्य नानाभागेभ्यः समागताः छात्राः विद्वांसश्च सर्वं
I, Rupal Shukla, and my friend
Kavita Verma,
on the behalf of Chinmaya Vishwa Vidyapeeth and AICTE, we welcome you all today in this National Youth Conference IKS. भरत भुवो विद्यास्थानानाम् आनयनाय व्यवहारे अभिनवसरणौ समुदयमानम् अतिशयमतिशेते जगति अतिशयमतिशेते जगति.
Today, IKS is as important for our culture as food for us.
Imagine if a lion cub grows in the group of sheep, what happens?
He becomes like a sheep, even he forgets his own strength.
Unfortunately, we are also facing the same difficulty to keep our culture alive in the minds of new generations.
Therefore, the goal of this conference is not just presenting the papers, but also
how the word can be empowered by IKS.
To build this vision, we have multiple intensive presentations and talks by the youth,
professors,
leaders,
and scholars. Let's begin with the first plenary speech by Sri Raghav Krishna ji. I request Raghav Krishna ji to please have the stage. Let us introduce him. Raghav sir carries 21 years of experience across game development, learning, entrepreneurship. He was the development director at Electronic Arts India. After his corporate stint, he moved into academia with focus on public leadership.
He was the co-founder and associate dean academics at Rashtam School of Public Leadership. He is currently the founder and CEO of Brihat Culture Creative LLP with a focus on cultural storytelling, IKS-based policy research and leadership development.
As a student of Indic Knowledge System, he seeks to provide perspective on tackling global challenges from an Indian civilizational worldview. I request Raghav Krishna ji to please accept our thanks and accepting our invitations, throw the light on the topic civilizational design. Welcome you, sir.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I don't think I can conjure a fraction of the magic that we've just witnessed with the two students. So I will set with that note. This place is very special to me. This is simultaneously the mother's womb and also the father's embrace. I spent some time here as a student, foray from the corporate sector into what I do now, which is the cultural storytelling, Indian knowledge system based research and leadership development, is anchored on the moral and the intellectual conviction about the civilizational wisdom and also the empathy of our ancestors. And that would not have happened if I didn't spend the time that I did here in this place. I'm not just talking about the institution, the people. I'm also talking about the tapas that has gone into this institution and the vision that it has set for all of us. So I'm very, very pleased and I'm very honored and I'm in fact very grateful to the organizers of this conference for deeming it fit that I can come and speak and share some thoughts. And I think there's also a little bit of conspiracy there. They've sandwiched me between Ganti Murthy ji on one side and the promise of the hidden secrets of our civilization by Anuradha ji on the other end. So I stand between the multidisciplinary tour de force that Ganti ji has given us and the secrets that Anuradha ji is going to unveil. But I'll share with you how my own personal journey and, like I said, my moral and intellectual conviction on the importance of Indian knowledge systems for the global grand challenges that Murthy ji also highlighted Where did that come from? Because this conference is not a typical one where we make some academic speeches or try and appear scholarly. There is no pretense of scholarship here, at least on my part. This is about the young people and convincing them on the empathy of their inheritance. It's very, very important today because the battles have shifted from outside to the inside. Vamsi Juluriji calls this the colonization of the senses. And today we are all inhabiting a world of fractured identities. And the challenge for a young person, and I come here with a lot of empathy because I am also a father, I come here with the empathy that it's not easy to be growing up and to be entering the world today because my generation has made it complex for you. So in a lot of ways, what I seek to do in my journey now is a bit of a penance and to make it easy for people who are going out in the world to hold a few lights for them. And if somebody wants to come back, we also want to light the path on the way back home. And that is the purpose of Indian knowledge systems for me, that it convinces us of the moral content of our ancestors. It tells us that we belong to something that is important. It gives us the conviction that we have something good to offer to the world and that we exist not just for ourselves, but for the rest of the world in the true spirit of this civilization. But to do that, we need to understand a few things. And I think we could not have had a better explanation of that than the session that we had just before the break. Gantiji made a very, very compelling case for the relevance and the criticality of Indian knowledge systems. He didn't do it by appealing to our sentiment. He did that by appealing to our intellect. He did that by convincing us that there is wisdom in it, there is rigor in it, there is science in it, and more importantly, there is a moral content that is relevant for the rest of the world. Right? And I'm going to use the same perch and approach it from the drishti that I call the design of the Indian civilization. I titled my talk today as the civilizational design thinking. And it is nothing but the drishti. It is just another way of articulating what Gantiji has already given us. But I seek to do that, trying to locate the way I have approached it and the way I've understood it. I had a So while that comes up, the one line takeaway that I had from Gantiji's session was a line that Anand Kumar Swamy, one of the most profound writers and chroniclers of Indian art and Indian culture, he said the way to approach the Indian civilization is to catch the rhythm and ignore the pulsation. You catch the drishti, the methods can evolve. You understand the empathy, the social context can be discussed, deliberated, and evolved. But don't lose the sight of the principle. And my case today in the next 30 minutes is to talk to you about the design of this civilization and how can you and I work together to hold on to that design principle and actually contextualize it for the challenges that we have today. I think the case has already been made that the future belongs to the multidisciplinary mind. The NEP talks about this. Oh, you're not able to see this? I think that's So the national education policy talks about this. Gantiji has spoken about it. The entire IKS case rests on the premise that if you abstract at a sufficient level, all of the world problems dissolve into two dimensions. One is the problem of collaboration. How do you create systems, incentives, structures, policies that help people collaborate with each other? And this is also the lesson that our civilization offers. It won't be an exaggeration to say, and I say this with a lot of responsibility, that the entire world today actually subsists on the surplus created by Sanatana Dharma. And I want us to reflect on this for a minute. What do we mean? We spoke about sustainability. We spoke about extraction. We spoke about how do we live in communion with nature. Clearly, if there is a civilization that has been doing this for 10,000 years, and we are able to still live within our means. You can go back and look at the data. Maybe, I think this has come out about 3 or 4 years ago. Somebody has done a survey about how many planet Earths do we need if we were to scale up the lifestyle that a country has to the entire world. Because that is the process of globalization. The process of globalization is that it transmits the desires, attitudes, values of one location and transposes that to the rest of the world. And obviously, if you do that, then you also need the material resources to scale up the lifestyle. Now, if you were to scale up the Australian lifestyle to the rest of the world, we need 8 planet Earths or somewhere around that. If you do that with United States, I think it's about 4 or 5. If you do that with China, it's about 3 or there and thereabouts. It might have increased now, but you get the point. That there is no way that you can simultaneously harp on globalization. You cannot say that we are going to influence all the cultures to have the same impulse and not actually account for the hard constraints that nature has imposed on us. We are a tiny speck. Gantiji has made it very clear. It's not the planet at risk. It is humanity within the planet that has to understand its boundaries. And when we understand this, we understand what the gurus mean when they say the world actually is consuming the surplus that Sanatan Dharma created. And what is the design of that Sanatan Dharma? How did it do it? It did not do it by imposing. It did not do it by violence. It did not do it by hegemony. It did not do it by proselytization. It did that on the basis of the moral conviction of the ideas it has. And that ideas speak to the absolute innate goodness that each one of us has. It talks to us directly there. And this is the knowledge content, this is the moral content, this is the design and the drishti that Gantiji has given us in the morning session today. And the purpose of the knowledge system is to curate the mind. So if you abstract all of the problems, they are problems of collaboration, they're problems of sustainability, but all of those can only be addressed by actually investing in the mind and elevating the consciousness of the mind. So when we say the future, the National Education Policy talks about multidisciplinary education. We are saying that the future belongs to the multidisciplinary mind. The case that we are making is that the Indian knowledge system is the best repository, is the best method, is the best content to create the multidisciplinary mind. It is not just the future, it is the result of a multidisciplinary mind, which is what we've seen. Mathematics and poetry, biosphere and psychology. All of these things, it is because of the university structure that we have today and the way disciplines have evolved into departments that we see these as different disparate parts. They are not. Integral education, the vision of the Indian education, the content of Indian knowledge systems is the ability to see all of these things simultaneously as co-evolving. Right? So if you look at the complex systems, and I didn't plan it this way, but the conversation that you just had with us in the first session flows beautifully into what I had in mind as well, because we have systems in the idea of complexity today. And if we have to understand complexity, we need a little bit of a definition as well. Let me use an example of this conference to understand and decode complexity a little bit. You can think about 4 levels. At the most basic level is an artifact. When you try to put a conference together like this, you create some collateral, right? There must have been a web asset, there must have been a digital asset that you floated around. That is at the artifact level. It has a certain complexity to it. Right? You need to capture the information in it. You need to make sure that it has a certain aesthetic. There is a brand recognition. There are certain guidelines. You go to the next level of complexity when you're designing something. You have to look at the artifact and the experience. Then you have to actually imagine how somebody who is consuming it is going to interact with it. Is it a clickable? Is it shareable on WhatsApp? Is it something that people can post as their status? What is the size for that? So you'll have to think about what is the next level of outcome you want with the artifact that you're creating, right? Now, if you abstract that a little bit further, this is not just an artifact and artifact that is shared. This conference has a purpose. It wants to shape the behavior and it wants to create the systems that can shape the behavior. So there is the overarching context of Indian knowledge systems, but there is an academic and a social compact that is being built here. We are trying to make sure that young minds are animated by the prospect of this learning. We are able to stoke their wonder. We are able to appeal to their curiosity. And we are also having a larger dialogue with the entire community, which is the parents, the policymakers, and the business houses, that we need all of these things to come together. We need the policy direction that talks about IKS, which has given the chance for us to have a unit like Indian knowledge systems within the Ministry of Education. We need the academic leadership. We saw the speech from the Vice Chancellor and the absolute conviction this university has that it is Indian knowledge systems that is going to inform the future of the world. That is academic leadership. It is not easy. It is not easy because the unit economics of running a university is absolutely antithetical to this. If you have to scale up to have 5,000 students, it is only logical that those students will come when you have career prospects to offer. So IKS has to address that fundamental need that there is a career, a fulfillment at the end of the road. And if universities are not able to do it, then it's a very difficult imagination for the place where they are able to see the third horizon. They're not just seeing the 5,000 students, they are seeing the purpose of education itself. Right? So that is the behavior and the system understanding that we want to draw. But all of that system, complexity, conference, artifact, right down to the first asset, is leading to that last slide that Gantiji showed us. And it is the fundamental vision of this civilization that the sum total of all knowledge is well-being, is governance, is sustainability. And that is what we mean by complexity. 10 billion people, all of us now, being beamed the world's seductions on the palm of our hand. How do you then control your own chitta? How do you actually live in a world which is incessantly stoking your desire, but not giving you the means to fulfill that? How are we all going to live the American dream? It is not sustainable. But it is immoral to have stoked the desire and then say, no, it's not available to you. Can you do this via policy? Can you do this by imposing a certain regulation? Can you do this by moral sermon? It's not enough. You need all of these things, but fundamentally you need a different method to prepare the individual itself. And that is the role of education and a teacher in the society. The role of a teacher in the society is to actually help the student deal with the vicissitudes that life will eventually and inevitably throw all of us into. And to do that with grace, to do that with joy, to do that with beauty in a manner that contributes to the rest of us is what we call education. And so I'm going to make a case that IKS is of course rigorous, IKS is also integral, but IKS is also beautiful. There is a Saundarya bodh in this. There is beauty and grace in pursuing this. And that is at the apex of our large-scale system. We created a design for a civilization for Purushartha. And I will talk about how to actually integrate the principles into mindsets and practices a little bit. So we spoke about complexity, and we said that you need knowledge, you need imagination, you need information, and you need creativity. So if you look at information, all of us get a lot of information. I open Twitter, I get more information that I can manage, right? You have to also have the ability to connect the disparate parts. So knowledge system or an education is supposed to give you the means to do that. But to actually tell a story, to see the design behind why that knowledge exists, is the purpose of human creativity. And this is going to become increasingly relevant as you enter the world of artificial intelligence, of chat GPT. What is really the distinction between the intelligence that the machine has and the intelligence that we are supposed to have? So invention, innovation, discovery, knowledge, information, wisdom, creativity. If you're looking at an educational system, and I'm talking to all the young people who are, let's say, either convinced about Indian knowledge systems but will eventually face questions, or who are just trying to enter this and just sort of tease what is out there and test waters, I'm going to make a case that if these are the things that you value, then you better look at Indian knowledge systems. First session has already given you a glimpse. Let's get a sense of the design. Now, I've used three words here: design, design thinking, and civilization. And I'll try and expand on each of these things. Design. All of us intuitively understand this. There are many, many definitions of design. The best definition that I like, again, comes from one of the stalwarts of Indian knowledge system, Professor Vinod Vidwansji, the cognitive philosopher. If you haven't looked at his works, please do. One of the best creative minds that we have out there, who's made a bandish, a traditional bandish using artificial intelligence and Natya Shastra principles, who's rebuilt a Veena, and who's given us this definition of design. It says, design is the manifestation of intentionality. I want to say this again. Design is the manifestation of intentionality. It is the responsibility of consciousness. Every single thing that you create, it has to come from that deep-seated intention. And you have to question yourself, what is the basis of your intention? Is it credit? And that nothing wrong with it. All artistic pride is the source of creation. Very, very important to acknowledge that, right? But is there a vision behind that and beyond that? So design is the manifestation of intentionality. Another way to understand that is the design is to design the design of a design. I'm not saying this because it sounds nice, but because it makes sense. Design, for example, there is an IKS design to this whole program, right? At the top level, you have the idea that there is a paradigmatic shift in education that we want to structure, that we want to shape. And that is the design why we are having this. But that is the noun. But it is to design, which is the verb, which is the actual work involved in creating these avenues. The 25 centers, the conferences, the research projects, the faculty development programs, all of these are the instrumentalities. And it has to lead to a design of education, an outcome, a specific process, a curriculum, a 2-year course, whatever artifacts we want to produce with that. But beyond the output is the place that we start from. The original vision that IKS has to meet in the final outcome of the design, which is a change in the mindset, which is the way that we look at education, the way we look at life through education has to change. So 3 nouns and 1 verb. Design is the design to design a design, right? So let's think about this and let's keep this in mind when we think about civilization. What I'm trying to draw towards is, if these are challenges for us today when we talk about Indian knowledge systems, what is the challenge to actually design a civilization? When we talk about 5,000 years, 7,000 years, there is a danger that we ignore the heritage because we have an abundance of it. Every street corner, you have a temple that is 800 years old, 1,000 years old. 1,000 years old. What does that mean? Try and think about our own lifetimes. There is nothing that we are able to hold on to for more than 5 years, maybe 1 year. And if we go down the same path, not even a day. How is it that the same ideas were held on, were transmitted across all this length and breadth of time and space? The minute we start wondering about that, and I've seen this, and I'm saying this not from any theory, not from, like I said, any scholarly pretense, but from the strength of my own journey, that when you start wondering, there is a very perceptible, very subtle but perceptible cognitive shift that happens. You replace questioning with gratitude. And that is the most important thing that Gantiji also started us off with today. There is a difference in which you approach your own knowledge system versus approaching anything else in the world. It is not immoral. It is very, very moral that you are grateful to what you have been given at home first. And then you critically examine the content of everything. But you need to be anchored here. You need to be rooted here and then explore the world. And once you actually experience that gratitude then leads to wonder. And the wonder leads to curiosity. And that curiosity leads to conservation. We will preserve Indian knowledge systems, we will talk about it, we will represent it when we are able to evoke that sense of wonder and gratitude. And that is the design. To me, the larger design of why IKS is important is not just for education. I would say, and I'm saying this with full consciousness, it is the fundamental basis on which national integrity is going to be secured. You will not have an India without Indian knowledge systems. The kind of dangers that we face today, some of us are aware of it, we deal with it all the time. And it needs all of us to be working together. And you need a knowledge system that holds all of our minds together towards that. Without that, you will have subnational discourses, you will have separatist discourses, you will have the vivisection of Bharat, which we will never allow to happen again. So to me, the purpose of Indian knowledge system is refinement of the individual, of the nation together. And for that, we also have to recognize that we are grateful for what we've inherited. So if that is design, what is design thinking? Some of you might have seen this. If you haven't seen it, I'll just get into why this is critical. But any guesses on what this is? That's Tom and Jerry, of course. Yeah. So if I would taking a session or a course on design thinking, I'll have an extended time on exploring the wonder. But at this point, an MRI scanner. That is an MRI scanner where you go into this one, right? Now imagine a 10-year-old child who unfortunately falls ill. He has to visit a hospital. The child does not actually have a sense of the world yet, right? Adults struggle. After having experienced a lot of life, we struggle when we go into these places. No visit to hospital or to a police station is pleasant, right? We all know that. Any contact, either with something that reminds us of our mortality or reminds us of our smallness, like a police station, is never pleasant. But how do you actually think about a paradigm that can alleviate that suffering at least a little bit? A 10-year-old child, a 6-year-old child, how do you make sure that you make it a little less frightening? What does the world look like to a 10-year-old child when he goes into a hospital? You know, the smell, the equipment, the perfunctory and clinical approach to medicine. Somebody asked this question, how do we? And that is the paradigm change that a concept like design thinking brings about. It has a lot of consultant speak, which I avoid, but there is one fundamental value. It is that it helps you reframe the question. When you think about research, you probably have heard of inductive methods and deductive methods, right? Going either from the general to the specific or from the specific to the principle. But neither of those actually help you stoke your imagination and ask, how can this be different? And that is what we need to cultivate. We need to actually get a sense of asking questions that invert the paradigm. How can we make a case for IKS given all the constraints that we have today? We know that we are living in a global economy. We know that it is an integrated global supply chain. We know that it is a complex world. We know that the prevalent policy and the ecosystem does not support that. But Ganti ji, the IKS team, Anuradha ji, everybody constantly is asking that question. They're not saying, this is it, so only we can do this. They are not taking an incrementalist approach. In public policy, you are always encouraged to think about path dependence. It's very, very important. The next step that you can take is only possible by the path that you've taken. It is important. But if Swami Vivekananda had taken a path-dependent approach when he approached the World Conference of Religions in Chicago, he didn't go and say, my civilization is dour and dull and dusted. He said, I come here and I represent the highest and the loftiest of civilizations. He said that I am here from the land that has given refuge. Imagine Swami Vivekananda saying this all those years ago when the civilization was perhaps at its lowest. There is poverty, there is servitude, there is colonization. There is absolutely no way that anybody can say this will change. But he is the master design thinker. He said, I have come here with a message from the most ancient of religions, and we've given shelter and refuge to people of all parts of the world. It is the land which is, which you have to be born into if you have to ascend the last leg, which is mukti. Right? So, how might we is a big framing question that might help us. There are some steps. I'm just saying this because I'm referring to a concept. There are a series of steps that you employ in developing a product or service using the design thinking paradigm. It is basically empathize, define, iterate, prototype, and test. I want to just give that construct before we wonder about what is it that civilization did. Now, this is, if there is one takeaway from our conversation today that you want to have, I want you to try and see how you can analyze the systems around you using a framework like this. At the top level are the principles, right? The principles are what, it is values, it is a vision for future, it is an understanding of human behavior and societal context, call it whatever you want, but there is a sense of a principle there. A principle becomes a practice when it is actually enacted. I'll give some examples around this, and I'd love to do an exercise sometime in future. And it becomes embodied when it is internalized. Let's remember these things. There is a principle. If we say it is Purushartha, if we say, everything is sacred, that is a principle. But how does that turn into a practice? Because civilization is dependent on turning ideas into practices. That is what we call culture. Somebody, in fact, in the beautiful recitation that we had, there was a word, there was a phrase, I might not be able to say it right, but I think it said, the idea, the gnana became part of culture, how it was enacted. So this civilizational genius was in understanding the highest principles and making that a part of everyday life. You don't need to know sattva, rajas, tamas to put the haldi in your food. That is part of every single kitchen across Bharat. There is no kitchen which does not have that wisdom. That is culture. Every single region, every single subculture in this land has at least one festival that ties it to a tree or to an animal, which reminds you that you are one part of the whole and you are only existent when the rest of the whole exists. That is culture. Culture is stand in nature. When the principles of nature are broken by the process of evolution, you design culture to try and restore it to that balance, right? So you have the principles, you have the practices, you have the mindsets, and you have the techniques. What is happening in education today, and in a larger sense, the public discourse, is that we are stuck on the techniques, we are stuck on the debate, we are stuck on the immediate without ever having the ability to go to the principle level. Oh, but there was oppression. Yes, there was. Maybe there was. Who knows? We need to study. But I want to go to the design first. Can you really have a 5,000-year history, a 10,000-year history with only that as the basis? Should we study the Western world only in the context of race? Should we ignore all of the scientific advancements that they've had? It is a bad argument. And this is a very delicate process for young people, because when you come into contact with ideas, all of us go through this process of developing affinity with ideas, and we attach our identity with that. And in that process, we expose the deepest part, the most vulnerable part that we have as a young person into that. And then the culture demands that you perform. You have to keep performing because you want to belong to a group. And the group demands certain performances. It develops certain rituals. And once you attach your identity to that, any information that is contrary to that is an attack on your identity, your own idea of yourself. And when that happens, your vulnerability takes two forms. Either you become disillusioned, which is what you see with a major part of the world today, or you become too reactionary. What we need is the middle path, is the ability to understand the principle, understand my own tattva, and figure out how do I contextualize this. If you're able to do this, you will do exceedingly well. And I'm telling you, there's a great incentive for all the young people to study IKS from this perspective, because you will appear much smarter than your colleagues. I can promise you this, that they will be left in awe when they see somebody from an IKS speak about a certain concept with this clarity. They understand that the person is actually accessing something higher. And you don't need to perform then. You actually get to experience real freedom. The real freedom in accessing IKS is that it actually disincentivizes performance. You get from a position of freedom to a position of freedom from. Freedom to is what the Western civilization sells you today. Freedom to engage, freedom to consume, freedom to perform. The Indian civilization tells you, you have the freedom from performance, you have the freedom from consumption, you have the freedom from all the servility that comes with group belonging. You can be yourself, right? That is the purpose of the civilization design. Now, how is all of this linked to the civilizational design? We might not have realized it, but pop culture across the world, if you look at some of the biggest industry hits, and I come from the game development world, so I understand how industry hits are at least architected in a business manner. You think about Matrix, you think about Inception, you think about Interstellar, you think about Star Wars. All of them have the cosmology, they have the mythological themes, they have the dharma conflict represented creatively. We must respect the power of creativity. We must respect the Western ability to productize, to actually weave a narrative. We must learn the marketing ability. But we must also respect that the core philosophy is coming from our land. I'm not saying that created a box office hit, but it is appealing to the entire world because it talks to the universal in all of us. All of us, regardless of where we come from, have the same fundamental impulses, same fundamental questions, same fundamental anxieties, same apprehensions, same aspirations. You need, therefore, a coherent philosophy that is able to do this. Now, if you look at this, then we end with some of the ideas that this civilization has. And the way I've imagined this session to have an impact is that we look at an idea and then we go back to the structure that we had. What is the principle? What is the way in which it became a practice? How did it get embodied? And what are the techniques? So think about sacred cosmology. Spoke about sustainability. That is impossible. It is not going to happen unless you are able to reestablish your gods, unless you are able to reestablish the relationship in a sacred manner. Humans are capable of great things. They are absolutely capable of stupid things. More often, the stupid things than the great things. So there is a process through which you have to elevate. And that is only possible when you think about something as sacred. And this is the Indian way as much as I understand it, not from a traditional learning perspective. My intuitive sense of the Bharatiya way is that you create a sacred core and you enter into a relationship with that sacred. And it is that process of engagement with the sacred that elevates you. Then that reveals. That is why there is so much of literature on the received grace. While you're making the effort to ascend your own consciousness, it is there in the temple architecture, it is there in the Shastriya, that also the divine descends. Right? So if you have a sacred cosmology as the principle, the practiced way, you can think about that as the festivals. The mindset is what we carry. The minute we see something, we do this. This is internalized. This is mindset. And then there can be any number of techniques. You think about this relationship between principle. For example, every single time I'm here, I get so delighted when we have food. The principle is Annam Parabrahma. Great. It is God. Now, how do you make that a practice? I'm not thinking about God, I'm thinking about the puri. Create a ritual. Has been done here, right? You get into that state of consciousness. You bring out that gratitude deliberately in you. You bring out that contentment. That is practice. And that must have been continuing for so many years. Is that not a source of wonder every day? That one principle has been continuing for so many years? Think about it. How many of us have experienced something that we've created that somebody else has picked up? It is the most difficult thing. There is ego, there are natural forces, there are so many things that are constraining, right? So these are ideas. You cannot have sustainability without the principle of diversity. If there is one danger in the world today, it is the shallow discourse around diversity. There is one insight, and I learned this from Nagaraj Paturi sir when I heard him speak about IKS. He said, the fundamental principle of Indian knowledge systems is that nature needs diverse material to create life in life forms. Culture protects nature and therefore behavior. It is the continuum between nature, culture, and behavior. And we can think about the design. Think about all the wars, all the violence that has happened just because somebody is worshipping a murti. And in this civilization, the highest peak of intellectual achievement of the Saguna Nirguna synthesis has happened. Diversity of paths towards that one ultimate. It is, the problem is that it is said so many times by politicians that we don't actually pay attention to it. Once we look at it as a societal knowledge system, we understand and wonder about it. Think about the principle of Purushartha. It is not a civilization that is asking you to just, look at one dimension. It is the material well-being. It is the making sure that all your sensual desires are fulfilled. It is also ensuring that there is the harmonizing principle and the transcendent principle, right? All right, I think. So that I just wanted to end there with the thing that there is a design idea to the entire thing that we experience as civilization. This is on the basis of understanding both the permanent and the transitory. And if we are able to quote our own experiences to ourselves as a part of reflection, you will see this design within you. And I hope this conference and this workshop and the interactions help us all reflect on the design principles of this civilization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the beautiful description upon design thinking, and how this is linked with civilization. Please accept our thanks for a very enlightening presentation. Moving forward to the second plenary session, first and foremost, I request Sahana ma'am to come up on the dais. I also request our audience kindly put your hands together and welcome ma'am on the dais. Let me take this honor to introduce our next speaker, Sahana Singh ma'am. Sahana Singh ji is an author and commentator based in Ithaca in New York State, USA. She worked as editor of Asian Water magazine for many years. Sahana ji has won several awards for journalism, including the Developing Asia Journalism Award in 2008. A short animation video made by her on World's Water Crisis won the top prize at the TU Delft Urban Water Movie Contest awarded by the Delft University of Technology, Netherlands in 2012. Her articles have been published in Reader's Digest, Washington Post, Discovery Channel Asia, Asian Water Magazine, and other publications. Organizations. She is passionate about traveling and connecting the dots across different societies, civilizations, and disciplines. With such great experience, she is here to interact with us today on the topic, the importance of being civilizationally rooted. May I request ma'am to come up on the stage? Sahana.
Namaste, Hari Om to everybody. It's an absolute privilege to be here. I have been talking to Girwani ji, Pasala Girwani madam for so many years, and at each time I would plan to come, but something would happen and I wouldn't be able to come. But this year has been so special for me that I've been able to do it, and I think it's totally the magnetic power of Girwani ji that I was pulled here this time, and it just happened, So and coming here has been very rewarding because I've listened to such amazing speakers who have fired my imagination even more, made me think in different ways. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas, Kanti ji, Raghav ji, many others. So I need to go back and reflect a lot more. So Chinmaya institutions for me, they are like an oasis in the desert, because living as I do in America, I know a lot of people who go every Sunday. They go to the Chinmaya mission to attend various classes. Parents take their children. Their parents are eating in the canteen while the children are attending the classes. So that goes on. I've seen a lot of that. But I still thought that maybe this is not really achieving what it should be doing, because I have seen some of the children who do go to those classes. They haven't really changed in their mindsets. I mean, they do know a little bit of Ramayana and Mahabharata, but when it comes to defending India or talking about India, I still found something lacking in them. So I wasn't totally convinced. But then just a few days, what a coincidence it is that just before I came here, I'm on upcoming conferences, and I was talking to a lady in Bangkok. She's a teacher in an international school there, and her name is, I wrote it down, Chandrali Roy Chowdhury. And so she was telling me that out of the blue, we were talking about our education, and she said, I studied in Chinmaya Vishwa Vidyapeeth a long time ago, class 6 to 10, I was there. And whatever little I know about Hinduism, knowing how to do puja, knowing something about Bhagavad Gita, she says she still can chant chapter 12 and chapter 13 completely. She learned it in these 4 years that she was in CVV. I got very interested. I said, okay, I'm going to CVV to deliver a lecture. Can I have a separate call with you? And then I called her and spent 30 minutes with her to understand what was special about studying here. And she told me a lot of things. She told me things like when she came from Calcutta, where there was a conventional education. And here it was totally different. And she said that, for example, there will be fans in the classroom, but they wouldn't use them unless they were needed. So it was not like they went to the classroom and the fan is running. Some days the fan would not be running if it's not all that warm. And only if it's needed, they would put. So she said, we got the concept that, you just because you have something, you don't use it. You use it only if you need it. That she learned at Chinmaya classes. And she's taught that to her children. I was so impressed. And that's when I'm feeling even more proud now to come and speak to all of you, because this is such an amazing institution. I have not studied in this kind of institution. I have studied in typical mainstream schools, usually missionary schools. So she also told me that that today it's for her children, when she tries to teach them the Bhagavad Gita, then they treat it like it's not very easy for her to do it. But because she learned it at a young age, it is just totally wired inside her. That was one thing. Anyway, so today I chose this topic for a reason, because I've been living outside Bharat for so long. It's been 25 years, and my daughter has literally grown up outside Bharat. So this importance of being civilizationally rooted in IKS it holds great meaning for me. All around me, every day, I'm seeing children, many of them Indians, who have absolutely no idea about the great civilization they come from. And I'm seeing that, a lot of them are in the throes of depression for something or the other, some boyfriend issues, girlfriend issues, or something. Maybe they've chosen a course that they don't like, or they see no future for themselves. They've got into a course they're not liking. Or so the older kids, they've got a job and then they've lost a job. Now what? So, I see a lot of these children, mental health issues are rampant, I'm telling you. It's like some of them are diagnosed, some are not, but a lot of them are having issues. And that's when I realized that they're not rooted at all. They're not rooted in the civilization, because for me, just being that, having that rootedness keeps me happy, believe it or not. That's the only thing that keeps me happy. Whenever I'm feeling down, about something or the other, I just get the big picture approach. In fact, I've just recently recovered from cancer. I was diagnosed some 6 months ago, and I went through a process of treatment and everything. And to tell you the truth, it didn't affect me. The whole treatment, the whole thing, for some reason, I was all the time thinking that there must be a purpose for this, that I'm having this, and I'm going to get all right. And I did. And so this whole thing passed away like, I was sleeping in the night and it got over, the whole treatment and everything. And I'm back to, again, traveling and speaking. So for me, I derive so much strength from our civilization that I wonder why others don't do it. Why are they so lost? So that's why I chose this topic. So I want to give you 3 important reasons why you should be civilizationally rooted in IKS. First of all, at the individual level, I think it has the potential to give you enormous happiness. And let's see how that happens. So when you are civilizationally rooted in IKS, it makes you authentic. It makes you authentic. Being authentic means being closer to your true self. And when you, Raghavji the other day tweeted that when you align your swabhava with your swadharma, that's honesty. And that's exactly the thing, that when you align these two things, you become you become authentic, you become honest. So now you're not putting on any pretense, you're not putting on an accent, you're not wearing something to, conform to something. You're being the real you. So when you connect to your civilization and to your knowledge systems, you become very authentic, honest, and you feel because you're yourself, you're more happy. It takes the pressure off you, right? I see a lot of people struggling with, they're trying to play a part, fit into something, whether it's, telling the news in the TV channel, or, whether you're going for an interview, you have to look a certain way, you should not sound a certain way. All that stress makes them non-authentic. And that's why, today, nowadays, when interviewers, they also are looking for authenticity. When interviews happen, job interviews, if you say, I'm a team person, they'll ask you a lot of questions. They'll give you situations to know whether you are a team person. They are also looking for authenticity. So I want to make the case for you that if you are rooted in the IKS, it makes you a wonderful person, a person whom companies would want to hire, because you are authentic, right? Because you derive strength from what you are. And, if you look at it, in general, we are all attracted to authentic people in our relationships. We don't like fakery. We can make out who is a fake, and we don't want to be with that person. So it's natural that if you're authentic, you're going to be attractive, and you're going to be hireable. You're going to be a leader. You'll be a wonderful employee, and you'll become an employer. You'll be a leader. So that's one reason why you should be rooted in your civilization and Indian knowledge systems. Basically, your individual empowerment. That's the first reason. And the second reason, which a lot of people have talked about today, which is that it makes you a force for good in the world when you are rooted in IKS. There have been many civilizations which came and went. We had the Mesopotamian, we had the Egyptian, Roman, and so on, which don't exist anymore. And they were all destroyed by the monotheistic mindsets. And if if you ask those people who are rooted in monotheistic religions, what it is to be civilizationally rooted, then they will probably tell you that, being rooted in the books, whatever books they have, the teachings. Now compare that with us being civilizationally rooted, and you can see which is more beneficial for the world, right? Because for us, it's not about conversion, it's not about believing in one God. Our being civilizationally rooted means something totally different. Now, one of the things that I want to, I'm sorry, I'm referring to notes. I'm not as rooted as you all are still, and you could all just say it all from your mind. So one of the things that was also mentioned is understanding the universe as a whole. That comes from our civilization, from our IKS. So we will look at the earth, the Prithvi, we look at the subtle world, we look at the subtler world, we look at the whole cosmos. That's the way we look at everything. Of course, there is an advantage to looking at it in a subset of things, but not without knowing the bigger picture. So if you're only looking at the subset, then you're not really getting the whole picture. So that comes from our vision. Our Jnana Parampara teaches you how to look at the bigger picture. So it makes you a force for good. So in this context, I want to tell you and give you an example from when I was working as editor of Asian Water, and I would often attend these big conferences. And so I was at one conference where they suddenly brought out this big view about the one water system. Suddenly it was announced with a lot of fanfare that, we should realize that the same water that the humans are drinking is also being used by animals, is used by plants. So we should have this view that it is one water which everybody is using. And I was just watching dumbfounded as they came out with various ways in which we should use it as one water. And, the stream, there should be, when we withdraw water from streams, we should leave enough for the water to flow in the streams because it has its own demand. There's an environmental demand of water which has to be satisfied. And so all those things were explained as if it's something very new. So that is the day when I actually stood up as a journalist, since I was an editor of the magazine, and I started asking them, what is new exactly about what you're telling? And I just didn't let them go that day. I kept on telling them that this is not new. This is there in our own culture, in our civilization. We look at everything as a whole. So, there is nothing new about what you're talking. So then they finally agreed and they said, yes, many cultures have this kind of thinking, but we need to come up with new terms. So that's the reason we need all these terms. That's why we have created this. Now that also is something that we need to think about, that we as Indians, despite all that knowledge we had, because we got colonized, of course, and then we started this whole self-loathing. We didn't come up with terms for a lot of things. Like we should have come up with a lot of terms. So today we are forced to use all these things like carbon footprint and, all the whatever words you have. And so, of course, we also economically have to be superior in order to get our terms accepted. But I feel like being the oldest civilization, we should be the ones giving these terms to the world. It often feels very incomplete when we use those terms that they have given to us, which is never a holistic one. It'll be very compartmentalized. So when we look at how all the problems of the world today, whether it's climate change, water pollution, air pollution, so many problems that we are facing, we can see that it's all come from not being rooted in the IKS. The rest of the world, which has not been rooted in the IKS, has created most of these problems that we have. Sending toilet waste to streams, all these things have come from them. But then just look at how it was with us. A long time ago, we did not have a subject called environmental engineering. We didn't have environmental sciences, nothing of that sort. If you start looking for this in the text, you won't find anything which says environmental engineering or those things, right? Because for us, the word dharma itself is sustainability. Something that sustains. So dharma itself encompasses everything in it. So that's the way it was. But then when we got colonized, how things have changed. I mean, just look at it. We used to have sacred forests. We had forests that nobody could enter because if you went there, you're going to offend the goddess over there who is the guardian of that, the guardian spirit. So if you go into the forest, then you're violating her space, so you can't go to that forest. It used to be kept pristine, completely beautiful and clean. And people had a lot of faith in it, Shraddha. Or if you look at how people used to go to mountains or hills, it was usually not to go to the top of the mountain and say, hey, I climbed this mountain, I've reached this, the highest mountain I have climbed, and I've planted something there, I've climbed it. That's not the reason they would climb. If they climbed, it was to go to a temple. There would be a temple that there was the deity that they wanted to give respect to. So as a process of that, they would climb, or sometimes they would mostly do parikrama. They would actually do a parikrama. Mount Kailash, for example, nobody climbs. They go around it. So that is the sacredness that so many speakers were speaking about, that we endowed everything in nature with sacredness, and we respected it and we worshipped it, right? And so people would go to the part of a Tirth Yatra, and then they would give respect to the shrine, and they would also enjoy. There would be a lot of fun on the way. The whole process of going, coming would be fun. But look at what the British did. When they came, they set up these hill stations where they used to need to retire in the hot weather. They needed those hill stations. And so today we go to hill stations just to enjoy. We don't even find out what are the temples that we need to visit. And I have to confess that as a kid, I used to not want to go to places where, there'll be only temples. So I would tell my parents that I don't want to go there. You go to temples. I'll just enjoy the place. So that whole shift happened because of colonization. When we took away the sacred, and so now everything is to be enjoyed, just as it's a resource to be exploited, or it is something to be enjoyed. So that sacredness was taken out. And after we have done all that, after we have ruined the planet, when the rivers are now polluted, a mountain of garbage everywhere, we are generating so much waste from all the things that we use, that there's a mountain. In so many places in London and all that, outside of London, a mountain of diapers, because everybody is using diapers for babies. So that's a mountain of diapers rotting there, smelling. This we have done. And now to solve the problem, we are being told that you have to be environment friendly. You are being taught now in schools and colleges to be eco-friendly, to be environmentally sustainable. So there is a whole subject called environmental science. And laws are being made, of course. We are having new laws on how to save the environment. But I tell you, nothing is going to work. Laws, if you make a law, an industry tries to find a way to circumvent the law. So if you tell them that this is the level, then they'll try to find out some way where, they can send it off somewhere where it will not be recorded. In fact, most of the big cities, they are sending the garbage to some other country if they can. For example, Singapore sends a lot of it to Indonesia. Every country, America is also sending it to other countries. So they try to send off their waste to other countries so that their own country remains clean, right? So all this environmental sciences, sustainability engineering is really not changing the mindset. The thing which was there, which is not there now, was that Shraddha. That is the reason why we were environmentally sustainable. So without that, you can't just teach a subject called environmental science and expect that the world will get cleaner and the rivers will get cleaner. It's not going to happen. I mean, even if you look at the principle of water treatment, when I was editing this magazine, I gave a lot of thought to it. The whole principle of having a toilet in which you have water for flushing, which takes your waste, and then it is taken with lots of water. So you are taking clean water to take away the dirt, and then that clean water has to be treated so that you separate that waste out of it, and that water has to be cleaned up again. So and then all this goes to a river eventually. That is the design which could never have come from an Indian knowledge system based society. So now we are doing all these quick fixes, but the solution also has to come from us. So if you are going to be rooted in this knowledge system, then tomorrow you are the people who will come up with a solution which is based in that system. So we actually, for that reason only, I feel that, we have to teach the world how to get rid of all these problems. So this is the way to do it. There's a very strong reason why you need to be rooted in this system. And the third reason I have for being civilizationally rooted is that, there is this huge danger of being erased. Right now we are all talking and celebrating about Indian knowledge systems, but let me tell you that in the rest of the world, they're not so excited about this. In fact, they don't acknowledge it also. Living as I do, I live in Cornell University, and wherever I've been in America, you will not find any mention of India whenever they're talking about any subject. Okay. And even if you go to their museums, you will find the, statues of all the Greeks. They don't mind acknowledging the Greeks. They're very happy. Now that the Greeks are gone, their civilization is gone. They are very happy to give credit to the Greeks for everything that has come to us. So they will mention Plato, they'll mention Hippocrates, Democritus. All of them gave us ideas. We came to know democracy from them. We came to know about medicine from them. So once that civilization is dead and buried, then they are happy to give some credit to it. But when it is a living civilization like ours, then they are not likely to give any credit to it. And that you can see if you go to any Wikipedia or look up anything you like. You will not find the mention that it has started from India, it came from India. At the most, they'll say it is debatable. There's a school of thought which says it may have come from India, but we are not sure. That is the kind of thing. So one of the third reason why you should be rooted in IKS is that you have to fight these narratives. These narratives are embedded now in all the courses where, you will, the history of anything that you try to read, you will find that it starts with Greece, acknowledging Greece, how Greeks did this for us, this, and then nothing. Even the numerals are called Arabic numerals. So, of course, of late they've started saying Hindu Arabic numerals, but there's no mention of the contribution of Hinduism to all these knowledge systems. Okay. So I know every now and then we get a forward that there is a statue of Sushruta in front of this institute, or there is, some other Aryabhata statue somewhere in front of another institute. But let me tell you, that's just us getting excited about it. Most of them don't know anything about this. In fact, they keep, and it's not just outsiders, it's our own people who talk like this. So I was at a dinner the other day, and there was a lady talking to me, and she was saying that, when I was talking about that, naturally, wherever I go, I don't know how the topic comes to our civilization and educational heritage, and I was talking about that. And she started saying that, that Buddhism was erased from India. So what do you mean? So, yeah, it was Shankara who erased Buddhism from India. I said, what do you mean by erased? He didn't go and erase anything. There were debates. There were debates between scholars, and ultimately the more acceptable view prevailed, and the other one receded. So it was not like some, Shankara went about killing anybody. But can you believe it? She actually thought that it was violently and brutally removed from India, Buddhism. That was the impression. And she's thinking Shankara followers did it. And she was actually a Rhodes scholar. So that alarmed me, that our own people, they have been so brainwashed that they have these kind of views. So that's another very big reason that I feel that you all should be embedded in the Indian knowledge systems, because you have a very big responsibility. You have to counter all these narratives. And for that, you have to not only live the life, but you also should know how to counter the lies. So we mostly stay in our echo chambers and we don't get out of the comfort zone. I mean, it's very good to be doing whatever work you're doing, being rooted, but at the same time, you have to also know how to counter those false narratives. Just give me a moment. So I also want to tell you that in America, a lot of propaganda is going on against Hinduism. Some of it you might know from time to time, but it's very important for us to know, because whatever happens in America doesn't just stay there. It also comes here. Those very organizations, their copycat organizations come here. So one of the things that has happened is that all the good things that are in Hinduism, like, which have come from our culture, whether it's yoga, dhyana, all those things are being appropriated, culturally appropriated, and they are being divorced from its roots. And then what is left behind in Hinduism after they have taken away everything? Ayurveda is now for everybody. It's not a Hindu subject. Ayurveda was meant, and we don't even know whether it came from India, according to those people. And they will make it seem like it's naturopathy kind of thing. It's nature which is there, the herbs. So there is not much acknowledgement given. And Ayurveda itself, by the way, is simply distorted. So you will have many people having, I went to a hair salon where it's called Aveda. The Ayurveda has become Aveda. And they are giving all these shampoos with something or the other, some herb, and they are saying this is very powerful. So they have taken out from Ayurveda these things. Some good elements are there in all those shampoos and oils and all, but no credit given to Ayurveda. So we already know what happened with neem, the patent for neem, right? So whatever good is there in our culture, in our Hinduism, in our civilization, it's being taken away and packaged in a way that it has nothing to do with India. And what is left behind in Hinduism is patriarchy, caste system, low position of women. This is exactly what I saw in my daughter's textbook when I moved to America. Until then, I was not writing about history. I was only writing about water management and all that. So when I saw my daughter's textbook and I saw what's in it, there was very little about India, but it was all about caste discrimination. The highest form of inequality, which goes against the Western principles of egalitarianism, is the caste system, which is found in India. And this is how they teach every child about India. Okay. So that is why when you are rooted in in the IKS, you should be able to counter this. If you go abroad to study, you will invariably come across this question: which caste you belong to? Oh, and then they'll give you a smirk. If you happen to say that you're a Brahmin, they'll give you a knowing smile that, like as if you're an oppressor and you have come here because you're a Brahmin and all this stuff. They make all these assumptions. And if I talk about my husband, they'll say, okay, what caste is he? So they are actually now perpetuating this caste narrative. And if you go and look into it, there are actually organizations which are doing it in a very systematic way. So there is Equality Labs, for instance. I don't know how many of you have heard about it. And there are many others. They have actually put together a lot of good content, very well-made content, showing videos of oppression. I don't know how they have gone to some villages. They're showing somebody dying in a fire. Somebody is doing this, that. All that they put together, and they make you hate Hinduism. In fact, hate India also. If anybody goes to one of those courses, and this has actually affected some of my friends' children also. Imagine the friends in my circle. So one of them, in fact, she was going to Chinmaya classes also, I remember. And suddenly she started sharing videos of Arundhati Roy and all that stuff, and talking about oppressive Indian state and, women being oppressed in India, all those things, how the marriage ceremony is an oppressive ceremony. So there is a targeted way in which our children are being told that, they belong to a very backward civilization, and they need to distance, and they are distancing themselves from it. So when they go through their college education, most of them will never use the word Hindu or say anything about Hinduism. They'll only talk about general things about India, something, and they'll have Diwali and Holi. That's the only thing. Diwali party will be there, in which they'll dance. They know nothing about the real meaning of Diwali, Deepavali. Same thing with Holi. Holi is about colors. Now there's also Holi against Hindutva. There is they celebrate Holi and they call it that they're celebrating against Hindutva. So this is becoming rampant in all the Indian institutions, all the American institutions. Some of you who graduated many years ago may not have seen this, but if you go now, you will find that those who are very staunch Hindus, very proud of their Hindu heritage, they're very muted. They don't talk much about it. And the others who are very popular will try to distance themselves from their Hindu heritage because they don't want to be asked about the caste system and all that, right? So they are on the back foot. So this is something I want to caution you about, that when we are all comfortable, we are all very proud of what we have done, but we also have to think about countering these narratives. And, just recently I was, and I'm one of those who often gets into a fight because on Facebook especially, and some people tell me, why are you wasting your time? You should be writing books, you should be doing this. Why are you wasting time with these idiots? But I have noticed that there is some value in engaging with these idiots. I mean, I pick the idiot that I want to engage with. Because where I will be read by many others. So it happened in one, NPR article. Recently, there was an article in which they talked about how yoga gurus are are actually not okay. Basically, they're not right in the head because most of them are conspiracy theorists. So recently there is now this yoga guru is actually a white lady who has got into some, there's something called QAnon kind of a conspiracy theory, and she started talking about it and advocating for it. And so that article talks about how there is a tendency for yoga gurus to be a part of conspiracy theories. So this is a new thing, by the way. Earlier, yoga gurus were being tarnished for being sexual predators. So there were many articles in New York Times and all that where they talked about how the process of yoga itself leads to some kind of intimacy between the teacher and the student, and that leads to a lot of things happening. And so this was like a cautionary tale that, don't just start learning yoga asanas from people because you might land up in the hand of a sexual predator. So Vikram, because this Vikram Chaudhary was a very famous yoga guru, and he's made that example because he was of course a sexual predator, and he's in jail now. And so he has assaulted many of his students. So that was made into a big thing. Then I think a Netflix documentary has been made on it. You see, Netflix is so popular that when these documentaries show up, as soon as you go on Netflix, you are going to watch it. And our children watch it too, and they also form similar opinions. So like Osho, they made some documentary on Osho, Wild Wild Country or something like that, in which they showed the whole thing about how it all unraveled. Osho, it became absolute mayhem there, and students were doing all kinds of things, even assaulting and murdering each other. So there is a narrative being built. See, earlier yoga was accepted with a lot of gratitude. When yoga first went to the West, it was accepted with a lot of gratitude. When Swami Vivekananda went, then various other gurus went. But slowly what happened, it has created a lot of insecurity among the Christian-based denominations, because, whatever you say, every Sunday, a lot of Americans go to the church, and they are quite devout, many of them. So many of them are not comfortable with yoga. And so they are using all these documentaries, these stories, or rather they must be the one getting these made. And so they are creating this kind of a fear and disillusionment about yoga. So that's the reason I thought I will engage with one of these guys who was talking about, beef eating and, your country, they don't, your food is roaming around on the streets and you don't eat it, and you talk about this yoga and things like that, which messes up your mind. I know something he had written. So I went back and hit hard and gave it back to him. And I used, all kinds of words, but of course not using words which will get me banned from Facebook. And that statement of mine became very popular. So this is the advantage. If you choose the idiots well and attack them, then what happens is there'll be many, many people who will be reacting to what you said, and a lot of people agreed. So I also saw that there are many people in America who agree with what I say, and they started following me and they are reading what I'm writing. So they're saying, oh, really? I said that that's the reason why knowledge was not given to everybody. We used to look at adhikara, whether somebody has the ability to absorb the knowledge. So I said, the idiot that you're mentioning in this article, who has taught rubbish to his students, he would never be taught you any philosophy or he would not be accepted in any Gurukula in India. So I wrote those things. So they got interested in Gurukula education and things like that. In fact, another idiot came and said, I took him on as well. He said that, I'm sorry, I hope the word idiot is not banned here. I know this is a very dharmic institution, but so that guy told me that maybe yoga did not get invented in India, the yoga asanas, because when the British were, they introduced calisthenics to India, and that calisthenics became yoga postures. Because he said, show me one place where you can see all the yoga poses, which is older than 500, 600 years old. So where is it? Show me where all the poses are there. I said, what do you mean? Have you not seen the Harappan seal? The Harappan seal, where there is a meditating yogi, who could be Shiva, who could be anybody, Pashupatinath. He said, are you kidding me? That's not a yogic position. That's show me a downward dog. Then I'll accept dog. But they have all these names for the yoga asanas, which is very shameful, because whoever has taught them all that, they don't teach them the Sanskrit word. So the Sanskrit word is removed, and they remember only camel pose, downward dog pose, and that's the way they refer to it. So anyway, again, that guy also gave him a big beating. I said, a stupid person like you is, and he said that seal is only showing a man squatting on the floor. Where is it showing a yoga pose? You're telling me that's a yoga pose? Show me a downward dog. I said, you are such an idiot that you think that guy is squatting on the floor. Have you looked at the seal carefully? Look at his feet. His feet are in such a way that if you try doing it, you will break your knees and legs. Try to sit in that position that he's sitting. And people are trying to find out what pose it is. Most likely it is Mula Bandhasana. So I sent him a paper on that, and read it, and then you will understand he's not squatting on the floor. So, and as for the poses on the walls of temples, I sent him a big list of all those poses. Thanks to Abhijit Chavda ji, I luckily found his Twitter thread in which he has put everything. I was able to just copy and paste that link. So after that, he shut up this guy and he didn't come back to me. So sometimes, you may have to engage with people in order to get our narrative across, right? Choose them carefully. Be sure in your knowledge, because not everybody is an ignoramus. They'll come back to you with a lot of data. They'll tell you that so many Buddhist temples were destroyed by Indians and this and that. So you should have done your research to know whether there is, it's just a fantasy. And the other problem is also, of course, that we haven't written enough books or enough papers countering those false narratives. That's also a job that your generation has to do. You have to pick up all those things and you have to write those things. So, things like, suddenly out of the world, we were told that Gaia, the earth should be called Gaia, because Gaia is the Greek goddess, who symbolizes the earth. So when we look at the earth as Gaia, it means it's a connected organism. It's a living organism. So immediately you should be able to tell them that we have our Bhumi Devi. We have our Gayatri. We have also, but not just telling will not do. There should be good papers on it that you can cite. And I can see that Raghavji is one of those people who has been writing papers. But how much can one Raghavji do? We need millions of Raghavjis who are going to write such brilliant papers, which will counter the false narrative and put across our history, our story with well substantiated facts. So that's another reason you need to be rooted in IKS. Only if you're rooted in it, you get all that deep understanding and you'll be able to write about it. So please take this very seriously. Think about how to change the paradigm. And in the next 10, 20 years, there should be terms that we are giving to the world based on our Triguna approach, our Ashrama approach, our Purushartha approach, right? We have so many different concepts that we should be using to present paradigms, to present processes, like even talk in our own language and make it very attractive and interesting to the people, right? So, if they tell us, a balanced approach, this approach, that approach, something, they'll give you terms. We should also be able to give our own terms and we should start implementing them. And then we show them that we use this approach for education and these were the results we got, right? We use the Panchabhuta approach, we use this approach, and the science learning became much better. So I hope that as part of the IKS initiative, there'll be so many papers produced that it can be used to change the narrative. So that's the third thing that I want to tell you. So I'm coming close to the end of my speech. I think that if we do not fight the false narratives, what will happen is that it is bad for the whole world. It's not just for us. It's not just that nobody knows what we did, but it's bad for the whole world. I mean, in the sense that for humanity to exist, it's important that we tell our stories and we bring back our narratives and we strengthen our civilizational roots. We strengthen it to the point that we know what we are doing and we live that life and we are able to explain it very articulately and inspire the people. That's very, very important. So during the next 3 days, I hope that whatever the speakers said today, that happens, that, you're able to light a lamp within yourself and you're going to illuminate the path for thousands of others, because only a few of you have come here, but few have to go and inspire the much bigger world. So I hope that you will all listen attentively, take notes, and go and reflect. As it was said, that there are so many places here to go and reflect. Be in touch with the knowledgeable people here, so that if you have questions, you can go and clarify with them. So I wish you all the best. It was very nice interacting with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We are delighted to have your very energetic words today. I think each one of us were so focused and couldn't even turn our faces anywhere. When people like you speak about being rooted with our culture, we actually understand the importance of it. You also gave us the target to find a solution for some of the main problems today and how we need to take the IKS on the word platform. Thank you so much, ma'am, once again. Now, moving forward, I would like to take the privilege to invite one of our most favorite professors, very logical, our own Professor Karthik Sharma ji, to please ornate the stage with his presence. Karthik Sharma ji. Karthik sir has completed his advanced traditional studies in Advaita Vedanta, and he is one of the renowned Vedantis in India. He also participates in traditional Vakyarth Sadas across India. He has published many papers based on Nyaya and Advaita Vedanta. He has completed the Tenali exam, all the 15 levels followed by the Mahapariksha. All the 15 levels followed by Mahapariksha in Advaita Vedanta and at Kachi Vedanta Shastra Sabha and honored by the title Advaita Vedanta Ratnam. There are so many. Swarnanguliyakam from Shringeri Matham, Sadachara Puraskara from Kanchi Pitham. Recently, he was honored by the title Yuva Vidya Nidhi. And that's the perfect fit. We have him here today in this youth conference. We will understand after this session that he is more passionate about IKs than what I can actually speak about him. I am overwhelmed to invite him. Please enlighten us today on the topic logics, Anumana Pramana and Advaita Vedanta. We welcome you, sir.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Atra Upasthitan Tattat Kshetreshu Krita Bhuri Parishraman Vidushaha Adhyapakan Chhatran Anyanscha Shrotradana Bhivandya Ham Vyokshite Vyokshitam Vishayam Pravishami Agrecha Mama Bhashanam Yatha Shakti Angala Bhashayam Bhavishyati. My humble pranams to all who are present here. The topic that I have chosen to present is logic, Anumana Pramana, and Advaita Vedanta. Initially, I had planned to give a basic understanding of the darshanas, especially the metaphysical concepts of darshanas. But in the interest of time, I think we are already late, but in the interest of time, in the interest of time, I will directly go to the topic. So, the topic that I have chosen is logic, Anumana Pramana, and Advaita Vedanta. So, I'm aware about the fact that I expect two sections of people. Some audience will be already has an understanding of the basic metaphysical concepts of darshanas, and some might not have much exposure to the topic. But I will try to address both these sections during my lecture. So, the logic. So I have visualized my talk in this way that I will present the basic structure of logic based on the contemporary logic, and then the metaphysical aspects of Anumana Pramana as it is formulated in the Tarka Shastra, which is also agreed in other darshanas also. So the basic structure of the Anumana Pramana as it is formulated in the Tarka Shastra is agreeable to the other subdomains of darshanas. And then I will try to relate it with Advaita Vedanta. This is how I have visualized my talk. So first, logic. See, this is a very popular term that we use, logic. Every individual in the society intuitively use logic. He will use the word logic in his communication, but he might not be able to. We, study the logic in an academical environment. We have to define it. So the definition is the first thing that I'm going to present here. That is, see, logic is a science which has certain methods and principles which will allow us to distinguish good arguments from bad arguments. So in order to distinguish two entities, we need to know what are the distinctive characters, isn't it? To distinguish one from other. So suppose if we have to distinguish a good argument from the bad argument, we have to understand the distinctive characters of the both. I think it goes without much explanation. So if you observe in the definition of logic, there is a word which is used as argument. So without defining what is an argument, it is not possible to understand the definition of what a logic is. So I will go with what is the definition of an argument. See, an argument is just a group of statements. There should be a premise, at least a premise. There should be a conclusion. A premise is something which gives us evidence, which put forward the reason so that we can make a conclusion. So if a group of statements, if that group has a premise and has a conclusion, then we can call it as an argument. I think this is clear. In the definition of the argument, now there is a word which is used, which is statement. So that then again I have to define what is a statement. So what is a statement? See? So before looking at the definition of a statement, I will show you what are not statements. See, what is Rajesh? This is a question. The second one, I won't read it in the interest of time. So please look at the slide. So the first one is a question. Second one is a suggestion. Third one is a proposal. Then the comment and an exclamation. See, it is not possible for us to assign a truth value to any of the sentences. You cannot say that truth value is truth or falsity. Both are referred as a truth value. So we cannot say that any of the sentences are true. Neither we can say that these are false. So what are statements? See, a statement is a sentence that is either true or false. So if we can assign a truth value to any sentence, then we can refer it as a statement. So an argument should be a group of statements, not just sentences. I hope. So now we'll look at some examples so that we can apply the definition of what an argument is. So this is a very classic example that you can refer to in the texts of logic. All humans are mortal. Socrates is a human. Socrates mortal. See, now the definition can be applied here because it has a premise, it has a conclusion, hence it is an argument. Second one, all mammals have backbones, humans are mammals. Humans are mammals, so humans have backbones. Third one, so this argument is inspired from the classical example from Tarka Shastra, that inferring the existence of fire in a hill by perceiving the existence of smoke. So whatever that smoke is fiery, smoky, that something which has smoke, and there exists the fire. Then the conclusion that mountain is fiery. So now we have looked at what is the definition of a statement, an argument, and a logic, and we have looked at the examples. So why logic? To understand arguments. So it is very important. As I said before, we use arguments on a day-to-day basis. We argue with so as I said, argument does not mean a verbal fight. It does not mean that it is a verbal quarrel, but you are convincing someone about existence of some phenomenon of some entity. So basically we might be using arguments in a day-to-day basis. So it is very much important to understand the arguments. See, when you are in argument with someone, he won't say that this is my first premise, this is my second premise, this is my conclusion. Now I have made my argument. So it won't be effective communication. He will say some sentences. By investigating the sentences, by observing the premise indicators, by looking at the conclusion indicators, we have to infer what is the argument that is put forward into. So it is very much important that the teachings of logic will help you to understand the arguments, and it will help you to construct arguments. See, when you have to convince a person about something that he has not experienced till now, then you have to be logical. So to construct argument, and suppose if he has experienced something contradictory to your argument, then he won't accept. So to construct good arguments, you need the teachings of logic. And to evaluate arguments, what kind of argument is that? Is it a deductive argument or is it an inductive argument? If it is a deductive argument, is it a valid argument or invalid argument? If it is valid, is it a sound argument or unsound argument? And if it is an inductive argument, then again, is it a strong argument or a weak argument? If it is a strong, then is it cogent or not? And does that argument has any fallacy? Does he sound logical? So these are how you evaluate the arguments and you criticize it, and based on that you will create your own opinion that this is a good argument, I agree with him. This is a bad argument, I won't agree with him. So basically, this is all that I have to present when it comes to the logic from the contemporary logic systems. However, I need to make, one of the two differences, the difference between what is an inductive argument and what is a deductive argument, because it will help me when I advance my lecture to the Anumana Pramana. So this is a very simple way to distinguish what is a deductive argument and an inductive argument. Deductive argument is when you are definite about the conclusion, that you don't say that suppose Socrates is immortal, I suppose that Socrates is immortal. So it is not on a probability basis, but you are confirmed. It's definite that Socrates is by the way, he's a very famous Greek philosopher. And the next one, that is inductive argument. As you can see, the first premise is the box contains 10 apples and 3 apples selected randomly were ripe. Therefore, probably all apples are ripe. So probably, it might not be. So it is based on a probability. So it is an inductive argument, not a deductive argument. So now why I have said this. Now we will look at how the Anumana Pramana is formulated in the Tarka Shastra. So Tarka Shastra is a word which we use to refer to 2 sub-schools of darshanas in the contemporary time, which is Nyaya Shastra and Vaisheshika Shastra. So both collectively is referred as Tarka Shastra. So, see, whatever worldly transaction that we do is always preceded by a cognition. If you do not cognize something, then it is not possible for any transaction at all. So, and this cognition is an entity. The substratum of this cognition is debatable across the darshanas. Some say that cognition is something which is generated in the brain. Some says it is in mind, some say it is in Atma. So cognition is some. What is the cognition? By analyzing the nature of the cognition in the Tarka Shastra, they have formulated. So even though the substratum is debatable, I am not going into that discussion, but we all agree that cognition is something that it's generated in you. So by analyzing the type of cognitions that we are having, the Nayayikas have classified the 4 types of cognitions, which are Pratyaksha Jnanam, Anumitihi, Upamitihi, and Shabda Bodhaha. That is, Pratyaksha Jnanam means the perceptual cognition that you will be having from the senses. So if you have 4 types of cognitions, I'm talking about actually the valid cognition, but I won't get into much that. And the second is the inferential cognition. As I said before, the inference of fire by experiencing the existence of smoke. Now that is an inferential cognition because you are not perceiving the existence of smoke, of the fire, and you don't have any verbal statement, but still you are convinced that there is fire. So it is an inferential cognition which is generated by the inference. Now third one is analogy, upamiti. Fourth one is shabda bodha, verbal testimony. The kind of cognition that is generated by listening to a verbal statement. I won't go into that. So the area that I am going to focus is on the Anumana Pramana, the second one. Yeah. So I want you to remember the classical argument that I had said earlier, which is whatever that is smoky is fiery. That mountain is smoky, therefore that mountain is fiery. Some might not agree. See, it is okay that if you do not agree, it is a valid argument or not. I said it is an argument. If a group of statement has a premise and a conclusion, it is an argument. Validity, we may have to discuss it in another context. So see, inferring fire in hill by smoke. So I want you to imagine a situation where someone, after getting up from his sleep, goes to the kitchen, where he experienced the existence of smoke and fire in his kitchen, and then he leaves from there, he goes to cowshed, where he again observes the existence of smoke and also the fire again. And from there, he again went out in the way, then he saw that in the cross way, someone has started a fire. Then he again observed the existence of smoke and fire in there. Then he again advanced from there and he went. And in the way he saw a mountain or a hill, he, experienced smoke, but he concluded the existence of fire in there. I hope this is a situation that you can imagine. Keeping in mind, by analyzing the situation, I want you to think of the necessary cognitive steps that is involved in inferring this. So once he has inferred this, then he is able to make this statement, that is, hill is fiery because it is smoky like the kitchen. Of course, I agree, if he has an inferential cognition, then he is able to make this statement. This is called inferential statement or anumana prayoga in Tarka Shastra. And if you analyze this inferential statement, anumana prayoga, there are 4 components in it. One is the entity where something new is claimed. If you are claiming the existence of fire in the hill, then that hill is one entity that I want you to notice. The second one is the entity that is claimed, that is fire. And the third entity is the by which that entity is claimed. And fourth one is the example for inference, if you have cognized it elsewhere, other than the hill. Terminological terms assigned to each of these entities. If you are inferring something in the hill, then hill is termed as pakshaha in Tarka Shastra, for the convenience of formulating the methodology. We all have to coin if we have certain terminology. So we are coining that it as a pakshaha. And the entity that is claimed is referred as sadhya. And the entity, the reason or the evidence by which we are inferring the existence of fire in the hill, here then that entity is. And the example, drishtanta example. Now, why I earlier shown the, how the inductive argument and deductive argument is different with each other, because someone who have referred to the contemporary logic text might have observed that the inference by analogy is classified under the inductive arguments. So I don't want you to get to that idea here. We are not going on a probably basis. So the analogy by inference is classified under inductive argument. That should not be the case here. Here we are talking about the deductive argument. I wanted deductive, necessarily that hill is fiery. This is a conclusion that I have to make. So, if you ask Tarkika, he would say that it should be a deductive argument when he sees approached by the definition of a deductive argument. So, if this is the case, what are the 7 cognitive steps that is involved here? See, if you assume the situation that he had, the first thing that happened was the repeated observation. He repeatedly observed the existence of smoke and the fire in 3 places. Then what happened? Experience of invariable coexistence, or which is also written, or if you refer the the philosophical academic text, now we have a term that is used as invariable concomitance, but I will go with this term. It's more, it sounds good more. And also the concept is also clear, so why we need that. And the third one is the experience of the hetu in the paksha. And the fourth one is the doubt that he have. See, he may also, the fourth step is actually optional. That the person, I think I did not say that when I was referring to that situation. That person goes to the hill and he had a doubt, is it fiery or not? Then he concluded, is it fiery? So that doubt is not a necessary step, but still I have added here because I am only showing the basic structure. And then it is the recollection of invariable coexistence and the subsumptive reflection, which is called paramarshaha. And the 7th is the inferential cognition that happens here. That is, that hill is fiery. Now we'll go one by one. So this is the first step, repeated observation. He's going to 3 places. He observed the existence of these 2 entities. So after the repeated observation, what happened? He cognized the invariable coexistence. So before before going to what is an invariable coexistence, I want to talk about what is a coexistence, which is a very simple, concept that we all already know. That is, if a mobile and a laptop exist in a table, then that mobile coexists with laptop and that laptop coexists with a mobile. So both are coexistent with each other. But see, by experiencing coexistence of two entities, it is not possible for us to infer something. What we need is invariable coexistence. So if you have repeated observation of two entities, if you cognize the invariable coexistence, I cannot infer the existence of laptop because I saw a mobile there. That is not possible. So you need invariable coexistence, and for that we need to have repeated observation. So this person had repeated observation. That is, wherever there is smoke, there is fire. That is invariable coexistence, which is also referred in Shastra by the word vyapti. So invariable coexistence or vyapti is the relation between that is claimed and the evidence. So whatever evidence that we use to infer the existence of something, it should be invariably coexistent with what is claimed. In this case, the smoke is invariably coexistent with the fire. So it is possible for him to infer that. So see, laptop is an invariable coexistent of mobile. It won't be a valid statement. It won't be a true statement. And smoke is an invariable coexistent of fire. Should be a true statement. It is a true premise. And when we say about the invariable coexistence, I just want to introduce the terms that is used in Tarka Shastra. And the vyapti, as I said, invariable coexistence, if we are able to express it in a way that wherever there is smoke, there is fire, then the first part, that is smoke, is referred as, or the antecedent, as they say in contemporary logic, is vyapyam. That is the word that we use for the antecedent. And the precedent is referred as vyapakam. I'm sorry that I did not mention the two words in the slide. So the antecedent is vyapyam, and whatever that is claimed or the consequent is referred as vyapakam. And so after repeated observation, he has cognized the invariable coexistence, and after experiencing the invariable coexistence, he is experiencing the smoke in the hill. That is the third step. That is, hill is smoky or smoke exists in the hill. I just rephrased. That's all. That is the third step that happened in the plot that I had just said earlier. And then he might have doubt. Is this hill fiery or not? As I said, it's an optional step. Might or might not have. But what happens is that, what I did not mention is that, but it is a cognitive step that is necessarily involved here, is that the remembrance, the recollection of what that he had experienced. See, experience something earlier does not guarantee that you can infer it. You have to recollect it at the right time, by which you are able to infer it in the next step. So by recollecting, so you have experienced the smoke in the hill, you have recollected the invariable coexistence, then what would happen? The next step, we have a very complex word here, subsumptive reflection. I just use the word that is in the academic text, but I will go with the paramarashaha. This is the sixth step, paramarashaha, which is also happening here, because without processing this cognition, it is not possible to advance to the next step, even though I did not mention, because I was not analyzing the cognitive steps involved when I was mentioning the plot. So this is one step that is unavoidable. And how this step is formed? See, it is by articulating two content that you have experienced earlier. That is vyapti jnanam and the paksha dharmata jnanam. So paksha dharmata jnanam is, I have earlier mentioned that as if you are experiencing the mark in the paksha, that is the paksha dharmata jnanam, which happened in the third step. And fifth step, that is recollecting wherever there is smoke, there is fire. This is the recollection that happens in the first step. As I said, the fourth step is not necessary, then we can move this fifth to fourth. So articulating what we have cognized in the fourth step and what we have recollected in the next step, what will happen? See, we are able to conclude that the smoke that exists in the hill is the coexistent of fire. See, it is very much essential. See, why is that? See, the cognition, the experiencing the smoke in the hill as smoke is not essential here. You have to experience that this smoke is a invariable coexistent of the fire. So if you do not have that cognition, so it is not possible to advance to the next step. What is the relationship between the smoke and the fire? How can I argue that fire is something that exists there which I do not perceive? Is it because of the smoke? No, it is because that smoke is an invariable coexistent. So without articulating the two data that we have gathered earlier, it is not possible to advance to the next step. So the Nayayikas have formulated that there exists something that is called the paramarsha in between, without which you cannot conclude that there exists fire in the hill. So if you agree to all these 6 steps that I have shown here, then he should have the cognition that hill is fiery because it is smoky, just like the kitchen. So this is how these are the process that is involved to process the cognition here, inferential cognition. Now, do Advaita Vedanta appreciate the application of Anumana Pramana in their domain? Many would argue that no, Advaita Vedanta is all about what we have to agree as the Upanishad says. If the Upanishad says, we have to hear it, we have to listen to it, we should not ask questions. If the Upanishad says you are Brahman, you are Brahman. If the Jagat is Mithya, then it is Mithya, you should not ask question. Shankaracharya has written many texts, so it should be that. It is not the case. We have asked questions. We have even asked questions. We have critically analyzed all the positions that is made by earlier acharyas. So, but a Purva Paksha, an objection is possible here if you refer to one of the work of Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada itself. So Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada in Shivananda Lahari, in the interest of time, I will only read what is required here. You can read the other part that is mentioned here. That is Vridha Kantha Kshobham Vahasi Tarasa Tarka Vachasa. See, you should not be logical, you should not be involved in logical discourse because it is a waste of time. So you should not get involved at all. So Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada itself says that you should not be logical, you should not use logic, you should not use Anumana Pramana in Advaita Vedanta. But see, look at the Sadhana Panchakam. There what Shankara Bhagavad Pada says, Dustarkad Viramyatam. Dustarkad Viramyatam. You should not put forward illogical arguments. Dustarkaha. Tarkaha, the arguments that is not valid. So Dustarkad Viramyatam. And what you have to do, Shrutimatas Tarkonu Sandhiyatam. The tarka, the logic that will support the position of Upanishad should be used. So you have to differentiate what is a logic. You have to investigate what is a logical argument, what is an illogical argument, and how you have to make logical arguments which could support the Veda, which could support the Shruti Vakya. And not only there, so this is another excerpt from the Shankara Bhashya. It is a statement from the Janmadhyadhikaranam, where the Shankaracharya says that not running counter to the Upanishad text, it's not ruled out insofar as it is adopted as valid means of knowledge reinforcing this text. See what has his written? Tadartha grahana dardhyaya anumanamapi Vedanta Vakya Virodhi Bhavan na Nivaryate. So if you are put forwarding an argument and if it is valid and if it supports the Shruti Vakya, then we should consider that. So what you have to make logical conclusions, you have to make logical arguments by which you can support this. So I will show an instance where in the Janmadhyadhikaranam, I will go to the last slide. So the text that I have shown is the Shankara Bhashya, that is the Bhashya that is written by the Adi Shankara Bhagavatpada on the Brahma Sutras, and the chapter, and in the second Adhikarana of Janmadhyadhikarana, the Shankara Bhagavatpada have clearly said that the logical arguments which are valid should be considered. And in that instance, in that context, see, so Advaita Vedantins agree the existence of God, of course. We agree the existence of God. And we also agree the Anumana Pramana as it is formulated, as it is put forward by the Tarkika to prove the existence of a universal creator. So God or the Ishvara is a word which we are using to refer to an entity which is a universal creator. So how the existence of a universal creator is inferred by the Tarka Shastra, it is accepted as it is in Advaita Vedanta, of course with some modifications and adjustments, which I won't emphasize more on here. So in the Janmadhyadhikarana itself, even though the Adi Shankara Bhagavatpada wrote that this Janmadhyadhikarana does not, the intention of the Janmadhyadhikarana is not to show the Anumana Pramana, but whatever that Anumana Pramana agrees is agreeable to us. To show that, I am illustrating this. So see, this is an Anumana Prayogaha. That is Kshityankuradikam Kartrajanyam Karyatvad Ghatavata, which is very popular in Tarka Shastra. So as I have written the English translation there itself for your convenience. So Kshityankuradikam means whatever that is earth, sprouts, etc. is Kartrajanyam, means it should be created by an intelligent entity. Karta means an intelligent entity, a conscious, who possesses some consciousness. That's all. So what is the antecedent and the consequent? Just like I had earlier mentioned, when we say that wherever there is smoke, there is fire, the antecedent is the smoke and the consequent is the fire. So in this case, see, this is out of context. I would like to say this, that this is the one of the convenience of Sanskrit. See, I only need a word, Kartrajanyatvam, to denote the Vyapyam here, but in English I have to write that the property of an entity that is being produced. If there is any other word in English, I would happy to use that here. And the consequent is the property of an entity that is to be created by agent. I suppose that you have experienced this invariable coexistence between these two properties, because whatever that is created, that you observe, should be created by an intelligent entity. So there are many examples. We have many repeated observation, just like the smoke and fire, and by the repeated observation, we are able to formulate this Vyaptihi, and by the Vyaptihi, it is possible for us to conclude that there exists a universal creator. I mean, there exists an intelligent entity. How? In this way. So we have repeated observation and we have experience of invariable coexistence. I hope everyone should agree to this Vyaptihi, because if the Vyapti is not strong, then the Anumitihi cannot be valid. Of course, the inferential cognition can be processed, but when we check the validity, we are not able to ascertain its validity. So the third step, mark, because we see that books and all the entities are created by an agent. And just like earth sprouts should be created because they are built up of molecules, molecules are again should be created. So everything should be created. And if everything is created, then it should be created by a intelligent entity. You can refer to the sixth step, which I do not want to read, but of course I'm sure you understand that. So in this way, we can process the sixth step, and the seventh step also can be, we can advance to the seventh step, which is, of course, whatever entity that should be created by an agent. Agent is the word that I am using here to refer to the intelligent entity. So if an intelligent entity is now inferred, now for the convenience, we have to give a name. So we call him Ishvara, that's all. So it is not that we already coin a name and when we infer it, and for the convenience, we have coining it by the word Ishvara. So this is how the Anumana, this is very popular as Ishvara Anumanam. That is the inferring of the Ishvara by the Tarka Shastra. Advaita Vedantins also agree this methodology of proving the existence of Ishvara, but we argue that it cannot be a deductive argument, it will be only an inductive argument because for some reason, which I do not want to again indulge into. So, again, that last slide is possible. So I have formulated this 7-step based on the format of the contemporary logic. Second last. Yeah, so suppose if we format it in this way, based on the format of a deductive argument. So all products are created by an agent. This is the first premise. Second premise would be earth, sprouts, etc. are products. So earth, sprout, etc. are created by an agent. So we refer to him by the word Ishvara. So this can be formatted in this way. So these are some of the observation or even analysis that I can make here. That better understanding of Anumana Pramana can be very effective of argumentation because it analyzes each and every cognitive steps that is involved, which are necessary to process the inferential cognition. So which is a different approach from the contemporary logic. So I think it should help to break down the process here. And the second is the understanding of Anumana Pramana can really help in getting the clarity in the teachings of Advaita Vedanta. I should say, I have written it softly, but I should say that it is very essential. Because why do you want to believe? Because someone says. Because in the current generation, the people, the current generation ask logical questions. If you say to him that you are Brahman, he won't agree. Why should he agree? If you say that all universe is illusion, is mithya, then why would he agree to that? So when someone asks a logical question, the only way to answer is through logic. Not a verbal statement won't do anything at all in that context. So it is very much essential to understand the teachings of Advaita Vedanta because it is something which is entirely contradictory. The basic concept of Advaita Vedanta is completely in contradiction with our experience. How can you say that I am Brahman? How can you say that this is all illusion? So the fundamental concept is itself when it's contradiction. How are we able to process it? So of course we need some logical thinking. Some logical thinking should be involved in it to understand that. And basic understand of contemporary logic can be helpful for the study of Anumana Pramana because most people are not don't have much exposure towards the Anumana Pramana, the terminological terms. And also, I think first, if we understand what the contemporary logic says, so we have to agree that it is also a good, process that they have formulated. So understanding of that would help you to understand the structure of Anumana Pramana. And the deductive arguments and inductive arguments can also be used in Advaita Vedanta because I have experienced it myself that many people when I give some lecture in Advaita Vedanta, I am not able to use the word Anumana Pramanam because it's a very complex structure. It has many terminological terms. Now it will take me many time, to tell them what an Anumana Pramana is. So in that case, so for them, without the Anumana Pramana, if we formulate it in the way of the deductive arguments as it is formulated in the contemporary logic, it will be helpful for them to understand how it can be a logical statement if a statement is found in Advaita Vedanta. So that's all that. This is my last slide. So this is all that I have to present. Thank you.
धन्यवादाः आचार्याः बहु सम्यक् बहु स्पष्टतया सर्वं प्रतिपादितम् and this is the specialty of Karthik Acharya ji that he explains everything very clearly and this is the sign of his deep knowledge of the subject. We saw the argument, logic and repeated sentences, repeated observation that is called vyapti, like yatra yatra dhuma tatra tatra vanni, where there is smoke there is fire. So let me give a small vyapti for his presentation and if you agree with this then give a big round of applause to this presentation. So vyapti is yatra yatra samyak jnanam tatra tatra samyak pratipadanam yatha anye acharyaah, like the meaning is where there is deep knowledge there is clear presentation, clear doubtless presentation. So if you agree, kindly give a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I would request all the speakers of today, Raghav sir, Sahana ma'am and Karthik Guruji, please have the seats on the stage. I also extend my heartfelt thanks that they have accepted our invitation for this conference and shared their vast experience with us. I would request now our Managing Trustee, Apparao sir, to please come on the stage and facilitate our speakers. Apparao sir. Please reflect your thanks them through claps. A big round of applause for them.
Wow. Come back again. Our own.
Thank you, Apparao sir. We thank all these speakers that they have taken the time from their busy schedules. We actually thank you from the core of our hearts. Thank you so much. Before going for the lunch, we have some announcement by Kavita.
So till 2 o'clock, we have lunch break, so you can have lunch. And after that, we have 2 to 3:30 poster presentations in CVV mess that is near to Shiva Shri building. So you can go there. And then we have 4 to 6 o'clock, we have oral presentations by the students and other scholars in Shankaram. And then very interesting, 7 to 8 o'clock, we have cultural program by the students. I request everyone, please present everywhere and just